The charity gala smelled of expensive perfume and older money, the kind that clung to velvet curtains and aged whiskey. I stood near the marble pillar at the edge of the ballroom, my champagne untouched, watching crystalline chandeliers cast fractured light across faces I didn't recognize. My pale blonde hair was pinned back too tightly, pulling at my scalp, a physical reminder that I didn't belong here. I'd been invited as a +1 by my colleague Sarah, who'd disappeared into the crowd 20 minutes ago, leaving me adrift in a sea of designer gowns and practiced laughter. I tugged at the neckline of my borrowed dress, midnight blue, elegant but slightly too small, and tried to make myself invisible. It was a skill I'd perfected over the years. Fade into the background, don't draw attention, stay safe. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, surrounded by the city's elite, and all I wanted was to disappear. My fingers traced the rim of my glass as I studied the crowd, politicians glad-handing donors, socialites comparing jewelry, and then across the room, I saw him. Owen. My chest constricted, breath catching somewhere between my lungs and throat. He looked exactly as he had 6 months ago, when I'd finally gathered the courage to leave. Sharp jawline, calculated smile, that particular way he held himself, that broadcast ownership of every space he entered. He was speaking to an older couple, his hand resting possessively on the waist of a woman I didn't recognize. Younger than me? Brunette. Laughing at something he'd said, I turned quickly, nearly dropping my glass, my heart hammering against my ribs. He hadn't seen me. Not yet. But Owen had a way of finding things he considered his, and he'd always considered me his. His project, his possession, his thing to mold and control. The room suddenly felt too warm, too crowded, the laughter too loud. I needed air. I needed space. I needed to leave before, Emma, darling. His voice carried across the space between us, smooth as silk and just as suffocating. Is that you? No. No, no, no. I froze, every muscle in my body locking down, my flight response warring with the paralysis fear brings. Slowly, I turned. He was walking toward me now, his date forgotten, that familiar expression on his face, concern masking calculation, warmth hiding ice. I thought that was you, Owen said, reaching me before I could formulate an escape plan. His hand landed on my elbow, fingers pressing just hard enough to hurt without leaving marks, another skill he'd perfected. You look different. Are you here alone? The subtext was clear. You shouldn't be here. You don't belong in places like this without me. My voice came out strangled. I cleared my throat, tried again. I'm here with a friend. Really? Where are they? His eyes scanned the crowd with practiced ease. I'd love to meet the people you're spending time with these days. You know how I worry about you. The familiar pattern was already reasserting itself. His concern that was really control. His worry that was really possession. I could feel myself shrinking, becoming smaller. That old instinct to appease and placate rising like muscle memory. Then I saw him. He stood near the bar, a glass of something amber in his hand, watching our exchange with an intensity that made the air between us feel charged. Tall, easily 6'3" or 6'4", with dark hair that fell just past his collar, and eyes that seemed to catch the light like a predator's in darkness. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, tailored perfectly to shoulders that suggested power barely contained, but it wasn't his appearance that struck me. It was the way he held himself, utterly still, utterly focused, as though the rest of the room had ceased to exist, and there was only Owen's hand on my arm and my obvious distress. Our eyes met across the distance. Something passed between us, a recognition perhaps, or simply the acknowledgement of a moment teetering on the edge of something irreversible. Owen's fingers tightened on my elbow. Emma, I asked you a question. Where's your friend? The man at the bar set down his glass with deliberate care and began walking toward us. The crowd seemed to part for him without conscious thought, conversations dying in his wake. There was something about him that commanded attention, that suggested violence held in check by will alone. My pulse quickened, but not from fear, not entirely. Emma, Owen said again, his voice dropping to that dangerous quiet I remembered too well. "We need to talk. There are things we left unsaid when you—" The stranger reached us, and suddenly the air itself felt different. Heavier, charged with something I couldn't name. Up close he was even more imposing. His face was all sharp angles and contained intensity, his eyes a shade of gray that seemed almost silver in the chandelier light. Those eyes fixed on Owen with an expression that made my ex-boyfriend's hand fall away from my arm. "Is there a problem here?" the stranger asked, his voice low and precise, carrying an accent I couldn't quite place. Something European, old money, perhaps Russian or Romanian? Owen bristled, his shoulders squaring. "This is a private conversation. We're fine. I wasn't asking you." The stranger's gaze shifted to me, and I felt pinned in place by the weight of his attention. "Are you fine?" The question hung in the air between us. Owen was staring at me now, his expression a warning I knew well. "Don't embarrass me. Don't make a scene. Remember what happens when you make things difficult." But something in this stranger's presence, in the way he'd positioned himself slightly between Owen and me, in the absolute certainty in his eyes that I had the right to answer honestly, something made me brave, or perhaps just desperate. I leaned closer to him, close enough to catch the scent of cedar and something wilder, and whispered words I never thought I'd have the courage to say. "Help me. My ex is here." The stranger went very still, then, slowly, deliberately, he smiled. An expression that held no warmth, only promise. "Is that so?" He turned back to Owen, and I watched my ex-boyfriend actually take a step back. "I believe the lady would like you to leave." "Who the hell are you?" Owen demanded, though his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Emma, are you with him?" Before I could answer, before I could think about the implications or the consequences, the stranger's arm came around my waist. Not possessive like Owen's touch, but steady, supportive, asking a question even as it made a statement. "She is," he said simply. "And you're making my date uncomfortable. I suggest you return to your companion before this becomes unpleasant." The word unpleasant carried weight beyond its syllables. It carried threat and promise and absolute certainty. Owen, for all his practiced intimidation, seemed to sense he was outmatched. "This isn't over, Emma," Owen said, but he was already backing away, his retreat disguised as dismissal. "We'll talk later, when you're thinking clearly." Then he was gone, absorbed back into the crowd, and I was left standing with this stranger whose arm was still around my waist, whose presence seemed to fill all the space Owen had tried to claim. "Thank you," I breathed, starting to pull away. His arm tightened fractionally, keeping me close. "Don't," he said quietly. "He's still watching. Give it a moment." I looked up at him, really looked at him for the first time. His face was striking rather than handsome, all harsh lines and contained intensity. There was a scar along his jawline, faint but visible, and his eyes held something ancient, something that suggested he'd seen far more than his apparent 35 years should allow. "I'm Sebastian," he said, his gaze still tracking Owen's movement through the crowd. "Sebastian Volkov. And you are Emma, apparently." "Emma Chase," I confirmed, my heart still racing but slowing gradually. "I'm sorry for dragging you into this. He wouldn't leave and I couldn't—" "You don't need to explain." Sebastian's eyes returned to mine, and I felt the impact of his full attention like a physical thing. I've seen men like him before. They believe persistence equals affection, that possession equals love. He paused. "They're wrong." Something in my chest loosened at those words, at the casual certainty with which he dismissed everything Owen had spent 2 years trying to make me believe. "He's leaving," Sebastian observed. "With his date. You're safe now." But he didn't immediately remove his arm from my waist, and I didn't immediately step away. We stood there in the middle of the charity gala, strangers playing the part of intimates, and I realized I'd never felt safer with someone I'd just met. "I should let you get back to your evening," I finally said, though I didn't want to. Didn't want to return to being invisible, to navigating this world alone. Sebastian studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable, Then he said something I didn't expect. "Have dinner with me." I blinked. "What?" "Tomorrow night. Dinner." His mouth curved slightly. "Consider it payment for services rendered. And because I find myself curious about the woman brave enough to ask a stranger for help." "I'm not brave," I said automatically, the old programming asserting itself. "You asked for help when you needed it." Sebastian's thumb moved once against my waist, a gesture so subtle I might have imagined it. "That takes more courage than you know." "So, dinner?" I should have said no. Should have thanked him and walked away and forgotten this strange, intense man who'd materialized like something from a dream. Should have returned to my safe, small life and my careful invisibility. Instead, I heard myself say, "Yes." His smile this time held genuine warmth, transforming his face from striking to devastating. 8 o'clock. I'll send a car. He produced a business card from his jacket pocket, heavy stock, embossed lettering. "Text me your address." Then he lifted my hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to my knuckles that seemed to burn, and walked away, leaving me standing alone with a racing heart and the feeling that I'd just stepped off a cliff without knowing how far I'd fall. I looked down at the card in my trembling hand. Sebastian Volkov, CEO, Volkov Enterprises. No phone number. No address. Just a name and a title, and the faint scent of cedar still lingering in the air around me. Sarah found me 20 minutes later, apologizing profusely for abandoning me. I assured her it was fine, that the evening had turned out better than expected, though I couldn't quite explain why my hands were shaking or why I kept touching my knuckles where Sebastian's lips had been. That night, lying in my small apartment with city lights filtering through thin curtains, I stared at Sebastian's card and wondered what I'd agreed to, and why, for the first time in 6 months, I felt something other than fear. The next morning arrived with gray skies and the kind of cold rain that soaked through everything. I stood at my apartment window, coffee growing cold in my hands, staring at Sebastian's card propped against my laptop. I'd been staring at it for 20 minutes. My phone unlocked beside me, the blank message screen waiting. This was insane. I didn't know this man, didn't know anything about him beyond a name, and the way he'd made Owen retreat with nothing but his presence. For all I knew, Sebastian Volkov was just another controller, another Owen with better packaging and more money. Except Owen had never asked, had never given me space to breathe, to choose, and Sebastian's arm around my waist had felt like protection, not possession. His question, "Are you fine?" had been genuine, waiting for my actual answer rather than the one he wanted to hear. I picked up my phone before I could talk myself out of it. "This is Emma, from last night. Thank you again for your help." I added my address, then stared at the message for 5 full minutes before hitting send. My hands were shaking. The response came 30 seconds later. "I'll collect you at 8. Wear something comfortable. Not a command. Not a demand about what he wanted me to look like or how I should present myself. Just consideration." I spent the rest of the day trying to work. I was a freelance graphic designer, which meant my apartment doubled as my office. But my concentration was shot. Every few minutes I'd find myself Googling Sebastian Volkov instead of finishing the logo design I owed a client by Friday. The search results were surprisingly sparse. A few business articles mentioning Volkov Enterprises, something to do with international import, export, and real estate development. A photograph from a ribbon-cutting ceremony 3 years ago showing Sebastian in a suit, his expression serious, flanked by men who looked like they could break someone in half without breaking a sweat. No social media presence, no society page gossip, no digital footprint beyond the strictly professional. Either he was intensely private or very good at controlling his public image. Both possibilities should have worried me more than they did. By 7:30, I'd changed outfits 4 times and settled on dark jeans, a cream sweater, and ankle boots. Comfortable, as requested, but not sloppy. My blonde hair fell loose around my shoulders, and I'd kept my makeup minimal. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. There was color in my cheeks, light in my eyes, something that might have been hope or might have been madness. The car arrived at precisely 8 o'clock. I'd expected a town car, maybe a hired sedan. What pulled up to my building was a sleek black SUV with tinted windows and a driver who emerged to open my door with military precision. He was older, maybe 60, with steel-gray hair and eyes that assessed me thoroughly before nodding once. "Miss Chase, I'm Dmitri. Mr. Volkov is waiting." Sebastian sat in the back seat, looking impossibly elegant in dark slacks and a charcoal sweater that made his gray eyes appear almost luminous. He smiled when I slid in beside him. A real smile, not Owen's practiced charm. "Emma," he said, as though my name itself pleased him. "You look lovely." "You said comfortable," I replied, suddenly self-conscious. "I wasn't sure what—" "You look perfect," he interrupted gently. "I thought we'd skip the restaurant. I hope you don't mind." My stomach tightened. Skip it? He must have seen something in my face because his expression shifted, becoming more careful. "I have a place outside the city. Private, quiet. But if you'd prefer somewhere public, we can—" "No," I said quickly, surprising myself. "No, that sounds nice, actually." It did sound nice. The thought of being in a crowded restaurant where Owen might appear, where I'd have to perform normalcy while strangers watched, that sounded exhausting. A private space, just the two of us, felt safer somehow. Or I was an idiot walking into danger with my eyes open. The drive took 40 minutes, city giving way to suburbs, and then to winding roads lined with old-growth trees. The rain had softened to mist, making everything look dreamlike and uncertain. Sebastian asked about my work, and I found myself talking more than I'd intended, about design, about the freedom of freelancing, about the projects I loved and the clients who drove me crazy. He listened with complete attention, asking questions that showed he was actually hearing me, not just waiting for his turn to talk. It was intoxicating, being listened to like that, being seen. "What about you?" I asked finally. "What exactly does Volkov Enterprises do?" "Officially? Import, export, real estate development, international consulting." His mouth quirked slightly. "Unofficially? I solve problems that conventional methods can't address." "That's delightfully vague. It needs to be." He turned to look at me fully, and I felt pinned by the intensity of his gaze. "There are things about my life, Emma, that are complicated. If we continue seeing each other, you'll learn them. But I'd like to give you the choice to walk away before you're in too deep." My pulse quickened. "What kind of complications?" "The kind that mean danger follows me. The kind that mean people I care about become targets." He paused. "The kind that mean I shouldn't have asked you to dinner at all because the smart thing would be to let you walk away and forget you met me. But you asked anyway." "I did." His voice dropped lower. "Because when I saw you last night, when I saw that fear in your eyes and the way you still found the courage to ask for help, I couldn't walk away. And I'm selfish enough to want to know you better. Even if it puts you at risk. I should have been terrified. Should have demanded Dmitri turn the car around immediately. Instead, I felt that strange calm settling over me, the same calm I'd felt when Sebastian's arm came around my waist. "I spent 2 years with someone who told me he was keeping me safe," I said quietly. What he really meant was keeping me controlled, keeping me small. "I don't think you're like him." "I'm not," Sebastian said flatly. "But I won't pretend I'm safe either. There's a difference between control and protection, Emma. One takes away your choices, the other gives you the information you need to make them. So give me information," I challenged. "What danger? What risk?" He studied me for a long moment, then seemed to come to a decision. "My world is full of predators, people who see kindness as weakness, who view anyone close to me as leverage to be exploited. If we're seen together, you become a target, not immediately, but eventually." "Like Owen?" I asked. "Someone who thinks I'm property to be claimed?" "Worse than Owen," Sebastian said grimly. "Owen is a bully who got away with it because no one stopped him. The people in my world are calculating, patient, dangerous in ways your ex-boyfriend couldn't imagine." The SUV turned onto a private road, trees pressing close on either side. In the distance, I could see lights, warm and welcoming against the misty darkness. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you deserve the truth before you decide whether to walk through that door." Sebastian gestured ahead to where a house was emerging from the trees. Not a mansion, but substantial, all stone and wood and glowing windows. We can have dinner, we can talk, and then Dmitri will take you home, and if you choose not to see me again, I'll respect that choice completely. The car stopped. Dmitri opened my door, his expression carefully neutral. I could leave right now. Could tell Sebastian this was all too much, too fast, too dangerous. Could return to my small, safe life and my careful invisibility. Instead, I stepped out into the mist and looked up at the house. Sebastian appeared beside me, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him despite the cold air. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "I'm thinking," I said slowly, "that I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. I'm thinking that you've been more honest with me in 10 minutes than Owen was in 2 years. And I'm thinking—" I turned to face him. "I'm thinking I'd like to have dinner." Something fierce and pleased crossed his expression. "Then come inside." The house was beautiful, all exposed beams and stone fireplaces and furniture that managed to be both elegant and comfortable. A fire burned in the main room, casting dancing shadows across walls lined with books. The dining table was set for 2, candles already lit, wine breathing beside plates that smelled incredible. "You cook?" I asked, surprised. "Dmitri cooks," Sebastian admitted with a slight smile. "I'm competent in the kitchen, but he's an artist. Please sit." Dinner was perfect. Herb-crusted salmon with roasted vegetables and a wine I couldn't pronounce but tasted like bottled moonlight. We talked about everything and nothing. Books we loved, places we'd traveled, the peculiar loneliness of living in a city full of people. Sebastian asked about Owen, not invasively, but with genuine interest in understanding what I'd survived. "He never hit me," I found myself saying, surprising myself with the honesty. "Not physically, but he had this way of making me feel like I was always wrong. Like my thoughts were stupid, my feelings were excessive, my existence was something he tolerated rather than valued." "Emotional abuse is still abuse," Sebastian said quietly, "often more insidious because it leaves no visible scars." "How do you know about that?" His expression darkened. "I've seen what it does, to people I cared about, people I couldn't protect because I didn't recognize the danger until it was too late. There was a story there, pain poorly hidden behind careful words." I reached across the table, my hand covering his. "Tell me." Sebastian looked at our joined hands for a long moment. Then he began to speak, his voice low and measured, telling me about a sister, younger, trusting, who'd fallen in love with a man who seemed perfect, until he wasn't. Who'd isolated her from family, from friends, from anyone who might have helped. By the time Sebastian understood what was happening, she was a shadow of herself. "I got her out," he said. "Eventually. But she was never the same. The woman she'd been, curious, joyful, fearless, was gone, replaced by someone who flinched at loud noises and apologized for existing." "Where is she now?" I asked softly. "Safe. Living in the countryside with people who understand what she needs. She's healing, slowly, but—" He turned his hand beneath mine, lacing our fingers together. "I swore I'd never let someone else suffer that way if I could prevent it. So when I saw you last night, when I saw that look in your eyes, you saw her. I saw someone who deserved better, who deserved to be protected, not possessed." His thumb moved across my knuckles, the gesture achingly gentle. "I saw someone worth fighting for, even if she was a stranger." My throat tightened with unexpected emotion. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything." Sebastian stood, still holding my hand, and drew me to my feet. "Come here. I want to show you something." He led me through the house to a set of French doors that opened onto a covered porch. Beyond it, I could see the mist-shrouded forest and, in the distance, the faint lights of the city we'd left behind. "This is where I come when things get too complicated," Sebastian said, standing close behind me, "when the world feels too heavy and the decisions too difficult. Out here, everything simplifies." I leaned back slightly, feeling the solid warmth of him at my back. "What kind of decisions?" "The kind that determine whether people live or die," he said quietly. "The kind that mean choosing between bad options and worse ones. The kind that require me to be something other than human." I turned to face him, our bodies inches apart. "What does that mean?" Sebastian looked down at me, his expression unreadable in the dim light. It means there are things about me you don't know yet, things that will frighten you when you learn them. But I promise you this, Emma, whatever I am, whatever darkness lives in me, I will never use it against you. You will always be safe with me. What if I'm not afraid of darkness? I whispered. His eyes flared silver in the shadows. Then you're braver than you know. He was going to kiss me. I could see the intention in the way his gaze dropped to my lips, in the tension coiling through his frame. And I wanted him to. Wanted it with an intensity that should have terrified me. Instead, I rose on my toes and closed the distance myself. The kiss was everything and nothing like I'd expected, gentle at first, questioning, giving me space to retreat. But when I pressed closer, when my hands came up to his chest, and I felt his heart hammering beneath my palms, something shifted. His arms came around me, solid and sure, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like falling and flying simultaneously. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Sebastian rested his forehead against mine. "This is dangerous," he murmured. "I know. You should run from me." "I won't." He pulled back to look at me, his expression fierce and tender and utterly focused. "Then stay. Not tonight. Not yet. But stay in my life. Let me protect you. Let me show you what it means to be cherished instead of controlled." "On one condition," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Name it." "You let me protect you too. Whatever danger you face, whatever complications exist, we face them together. As equals." Sebastian smiled then, an expression of such genuine joy that it transformed his entire face. "As equals," he agreed. And standing there in the mist with this strange, intense man who'd appeared in my life like something from a fairy tale, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. Sebastian became part of my life in ways both thrilling and terrifying. He'd text me good morning before I'd finished my first coffee. He'd appear at my apartment with takeout when I'd been working too long without eating. He'd listen to me talk about color theory and font pairings with the same intensity he brought to everything else, as though my thoughts on serif versus sans serif were matters of international importance. But there were gaps. Moments when his phone would ring and his entire demeanor would shift, becoming harder, colder, dangerous. He'd step away to take these calls, his voice dropping too low for me to hear, and when he returned there'd be shadows in his eyes that took minutes to clear. "Business," he'd say when I asked. "Just business." I didn't press. Not yet. He'd promised honesty, but he'd also promised choice, and I sensed he was waiting for me to be ready for whatever truth he carried. The complications arrived on a Thursday. I was working at my favorite coffee shop, a small place near the university with decent Wi-Fi and better pastries, when Owen walked in. I saw him before he saw me, and my entire body went rigid, that familiar fear response kicking in like muscle memory. He was with 2 other men, both wearing expensive suits and predatory smiles. I could leave. Should leave. Gather my laptop and slip out before... His eyes found mine. "Emma." He said my name like he owned it, like the past 6 months had never happened. He was moving toward my table, his companions following. "What a coincidence. We need to talk." "No, we don't." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "I have nothing to say to you, but I have things to say to you." Owen pulled out the chair across from me without invitation, settling in as though he belonged there. His friends flanked us, blocking easy escape routes. "I've been patient, Emma. I've given you space to get over whatever breakdown you were having, but this has gone on long enough." "I didn't have a breakdown. I left you. Because you weren't thinking clearly." His tone was so reasonable, so concerned. To anyone listening, he sounded like a worried boyfriend trying to help his troubled girlfriend. "And now you're getting involved with dangerous people. That Sebastian Volkov you've been seeing, do you have any idea what he is?" My heart stuttered. "What are you talking about?" "I did some research after the gala." Owen leaned forward, his expression earnest. "Volkov isn't who he pretends to be. His business dealings are questionable at best. His associates have criminal records. There are rumors, ugly ones, about how he maintains his power." "You're lying." "Am I?" Owen pulled out his phone, scrolled, then turned it toward me. "Read for yourself." The screen showed a news article from 8 years ago. Businessman Sebastian Volkov questioned in connection with organized crime syndicate. The photograph showed a younger Sebastian being led from a building by police, his expression hard and unreadable. He was questioned, not charged, I said, though my hands were shaking. That doesn't mean... Where there's smoke, Emma. Owen's voice dropped lower, more intimate. I'm trying to protect you. You're vulnerable right now, and Volkov is taking advantage of that. He's dangerous. People around him get hurt. One of Owen's companions, a heavy-set man with cold eyes, spoke for the first time. My cousin worked for Volkov, got involved in one of his business deals. They found him in the river 3 months later. That's not... I started, but my voice cracked. Come home, Owen said softly, reaching for my hand. End this thing with Volkov before you get hurt. I can protect you from whatever you've gotten yourself into. We can fix this. Fix us. But you need to trust me. I stared at his hand covering mine, feeling the old paralysis creeping back. The doubt. The fear. Maybe Owen was right. Maybe I'd been naive, seeing romance where there was only manipulation. Maybe Sebastian was just another controller with a prettier package. Then I remembered Sebastian's words. There's a difference between control and protection. One takes away your choices. The other gives you the information you need to make them. Owen was giving me fear disguised as information. Sebastian had given me honesty and let me choose. I pulled my hand away. Get away from me. Emma, be reasonable. I said get away from me. I stood abruptly, gathering my laptop. We're done, Owen. We were done 6 months ago, and nothing you say will change that. His expression hardened, the concerned boyfriend mask slipping. You're making a mistake. When this blows up in your face, and it will, don't come crying to me. I wouldn't dream of it. I walked out with my head high and my hands shaking, feeling their eyes boring into my back. Only when I was 3 blocks away did I stop in an alley and lean against the brick wall, my breath coming in gasps. My phone rang. Sebastian. Emma. His voice was tight with concern. Where are you? How did you... Dmitri was watching the coffee shop. He saw Owen approach you. Are you safe? The fact that Sebastian had someone watching me should have been alarming. Instead, it felt like vindication. I'm fine. I'm near the university on Maple Street. Stay there. I'm coming. He arrived 10 minutes later in the SUV, Dmitri at the wheel. Sebastian emerged before the vehicle fully stopped, his eyes scanning me for injury, his hands cupping my face with trembling gentleness. Did he hurt you? No. Just scared me. And told me things about you. I met his gaze directly. About criminal connections, about people getting hurt, about police questioning you 8 years ago. Sebastian's jaw tightened. Get in the car. We need to talk. And not here. We drove to his house in tense silence. Once inside, Sebastian poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey, downed it, then turned to face me with an expression I couldn't read. What Owen told you isn't entirely wrong, he said quietly. 8 years ago, I was questioned by police about organized crime. I was never charged because I wasn't guilty, not of what they suspected. But the reason they suspected me is because my world intersects with theirs. I move in spaces where violence is currency and power determines survival. What does that mean? My voice was barely above a whisper. Sebastian crossed to me, his movements controlled but radiating tension. It means I'm not entirely human, Emma. It means the complications I warned you about are more significant than you imagined. And it means Owen is right about one thing. People around me do get hurt, not because I hurt them, but because my enemies try to use them against me. Not entirely human, I repeated slowly. Sebastian, what are you? He held my gaze for a long moment, and I watched something shift in his eyes. Literally shift. The gray becoming more silver, more luminous, more other. I'm Lycan, he said simply. A werewolf, if you prefer the old terms. Alpha of the Volkov pack, and the reason Owen's friend's cousin ended up dead is because he tried to betray us to a rival pack, and they handled him before we could. The words hung in the air between us. Impossible, and yet somehow explaining everything. The intensity, the controlled violence, the way he moved, the silver flash in his eyes. I should have run, should have screamed. Should have done anything except what I did, which was step closer and ask, "Show me." Sebastian's eyes widened fractionally. "Emma, you said honesty. You said choice. I'm choosing to see the truth." My voice was steadier than I felt. "Show me what you are." Something fierce and pained crossed his expression. Then slowly, deliberately, he let the control slip. His eyes flared full silver, bright enough to cast shadows. His canines lengthened, becoming distinctly inhuman. His hands, where they gripped the back of the chair, showed claws instead of fingernails, and the air around him seemed to thicken with power barely contained. He looked monstrous and magnificent, and utterly himself. "This is what I am," Sebastian said, his voice rougher, deeper. "This is what I've been hiding, and this is why being close to me puts you in danger. My enemies won't see you as Emma Chase, graphic designer. They'll see you as the Alpha's weakness, his soft spot, his humanity to be exploited." I should have been terrified. Every rational part of my brain screamed at me to run, to get away from this creature wearing Sebastian's face. But I kept thinking about his sister, about the way he'd protected me from Owen without hesitation, about the gentleness in hands that could clearly kill. "Are there others?" I asked. "Other Lycans in the city? Several packs. Most keep to themselves, maintain the masquerade, but there are tensions, territorial disputes, old grudges, power struggles." He flexed his clawed hands. "I've kept the peace for 8 years. But peace is fragile, Emma. It requires constant vigilance and occasionally violence. Is that what the phone calls are about? The business you can't discuss?" "Yes. Pack matters, territory negotiations, dealing with rogues who threaten exposure." His eyes met mine, still silver, still inhuman. "This is my world. Blood and politics and survival. It's not pretty, and it's not safe, and you have every right to walk away from it." I moved closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him, close enough to see the tension in every line of his body. "What if I don't want to walk away?" "Then you're insane," he said roughly. "Because staying means danger. It means becoming a target. It means living with the knowledge that my enemies will try to use you to hurt me. Let them try." I lifted my hand, hesitated only a moment, then placed it against his chest where his heart hammered. "You said there's a difference between control and protection. Prove it. Let me choose this with full knowledge of what it means." Sebastian's hand covered mine, his claws careful against my skin. "If you stay, I will protect you with everything I am. My pack will protect you. But Emma, I need you to understand. Once you're fully in my world, it becomes nearly impossible to leave it safely. My enemies have long memories and longer grudges. Owen said people around you get hurt. Owen is a coward projecting his own nature onto me." Sebastian's voice turned hard. "I don't hurt people close to me. I eliminate threats to them. There's a difference." "Then eliminate Owen," I said, surprising myself with the vehemence. "He won't stop. He thinks he owns me, and men like him don't give up ownership easily." "Is that what you want?" Sebastian asked quietly. "For me to handle him?" I thought about it. Really thought about it. About Owen's hand on my elbow, his voice in my ear, his calculated destruction of my confidence and autonomy, about the fear I'd felt seeing him in the coffee shop, the old paralysis trying to reassert itself. "I want him to leave me alone," I said finally. "Whatever that takes." Something dangerous and satisfied flickered across Sebastian's expression. "Consider it done. He won't bother you again. What will you do? Nothing that will come back on you. Trust me." And strangely, impossibly, I did trust him. This creature with silver eyes and claws, this alpha who commanded violence with casual certainty, I trusted him more than I'd ever trusted Owen. Sebastian's form began to shift back to human, the silver fading from his eyes, the claws retracting. When he was fully human again, he looked exhausted, as though maintaining the transformation had cost him something. "There's more you need to know," he said. "About pack dynamics, about the other groups in the city, about what it means to be under an alpha's protection, but not tonight. Tonight, I need to know you're safe, and that you're choosing this with clear eyes." I'm choosing this, I said firmly. I'm choosing you, claws and all. He pulled me into his arms then, holding me with a desperation that spoke of fear and relief and something deeper. I'll keep you safe, he murmured against my hair. I swear it, Emma. Nothing will hurt you while I breathe. I believed him. And for the first time since meeting Sebastian Volkov, I understood exactly how dangerous that belief might be, but I chose it anyway. The following weeks brought me deeper into Sebastian's world, and with each layer revealed, I understood both why he'd hesitated to involve me and why that hesitation had ultimately failed. The pack house, a sprawling estate on the city's outskirts, became my second home. Sebastian introduced me carefully, explaining to his inner circle that I was under his protection, that harming me meant answering to him directly. The message was received with varying degrees of acceptance. Dimitri, I learned, wasn't just Sebastian's driver, but his second in command, his beta. The older man regarded me with cautious approval, as though I'd passed some test I hadn't known I was taking. You didn't run, he said to me one afternoon while Sebastian was handling pack business. When he showed you what he was, you didn't run. That takes strength. Or stupidity, I replied, watching through the window as several younger pack members sparred in human form, their movements inhumanly fast and precise. Sometimes they're the same thing. Dimitri's weathered face creased with something that might have been a smile. But the alpha needs someone who sees the man beneath the wolf. Too many only see the power and want to use it. You see him. I did see him. Saw the loneliness he carried like a weight, the responsibility of protecting dozens of lives, the careful balance between strength and compassion that defined his leadership. And the more I saw, the more I understood why his enemies would view me as a weakness to exploit. The attack came 3 weeks after Sebastian revealed his nature. I was leaving my apartment building at dusk, carrying groceries, when 3 figures emerged from the shadows. Not human. I'd learned to recognize the signs, the predatory stillness, the 2 bright eyes, the sense of violence barely contained. Emma Chase, the lead figure said, a woman with copper hair and a smile like broken glass. The alpha's new pet. He's gotten sloppy in his old age, hasn't he? Leaving you so poorly guarded. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. I don't know what you want, but we want to send Sebastian Volkov a message. She moved closer, and I caught the scent of something wild and wrong. That his territory isn't as secure as he thinks. That his protection isn't absolute. And that taking what's his is easier than he'd like to believe. The other 2 circled, cutting off escape routes. My phone was in my pocket, but I'd never have time to call for help. I was alone, human, helpless against creatures that could tear me apart before I could scream. Terror threatened to paralyze me, that old instinct to freeze and hope the danger passed. But I thought of Sebastian's words, "You're braver than you know," and felt something shift inside me. "You've made a mistake," I said clearly. "Sebastian doesn't respond well to threats against what's his." The copper-haired woman laughed. "By the time he arrives, you'll be—" She never finished the sentence. Dimitri materialized from nowhere, moving with speed that defied his apparent age, putting himself between me and the attackers. 2 more pack members emerged from positions I hadn't noticed, younger, male, radiating lethal intent. "The alpha thought you might try something," Dimitri said calmly. "He's been having you watched since the coffee shop incident. Did you really think he'd leave her unprotected?" The copper-haired woman's expression twisted with rage. "The Northside pack doesn't bow to Volkov anymore. We're taking what we want, and his little human is under pack protection." Sebastian's voice cut through the tension like a blade, and I turned to see him approaching, flanked by 4 more pack members. His eyes were pure silver, his posture radiating controlled fury. "Which means touching her is a declaration of war. Is that what the Northside pack wants, Cassandra? Because I promise you won't survive it." Cassandra, the copper-haired woman, held her ground, though I saw her companions shift nervously. "You can't protect her every moment. Eventually she'll be alone. Eventually we'll get to her, and when we do—" Sebastian moved. One moment he was 10 feet away. The next his hand was around Cassandra's throat, lifting her off the ground with casual strength. His voice when he spoke was utterly calm and absolutely terrifying. "If you or any member of your pack comes within 100 yards of Emma, I will dismantle the North Side pack piece by piece. I will hunt every member through the streets. I will make an example so brutal that packs in other cities will hear about it and think twice before challenging me. He brought her closer, his silver eyes boring into hers. Do we understand each other? Cassandra managed a jerky nod, her face purpling. Sebastian held her a moment longer, then released her. She collapsed, gasping, while her companions helped her up. Get out of my territory, Sebastian said quietly, and tell your alpha that if he wants to challenge me, he should do it himself instead of sending underlings to threaten defenseless humans. They fled, and I watched them disappear into the darkness with a strange sense of unreality. Sebastian turned to me immediately, his hands running over my arms, my face, checking for injury with desperate thoroughness. Are you hurt? Did they touch you? I'm fine. Shaken, but fine. I caught his hands, stilling them. You had people watching me, always. His eyes were still silver, still predatory. Every moment you're not directly beside me, I have pack members shadowing you. I told you I'd keep you safe, Emma. I meant it. I paused, trying to find words for the complicated tangle of emotions. That should feel invasive, like being controlled. Does it? Sebastian asked quietly. I thought about it honestly. Thought about Owen's monitoring, reading my texts, tracking my location, demanding to know where I was and who I was with. That had been about ownership, about eliminating my privacy and autonomy. This felt different. Sebastian's people had stayed invisible until needed. They'd let me live my life while ensuring my safety. The distinction mattered. No, I said finally. It feels like you meant what you said about protection. Relief crossed his expression, quickly masked. The North Side pack has been testing boundaries for months. This was inevitable. What happens now? Now I make it clear that you're not just under my protection, you're pack. He looked at Dimitri, at the other guards. Spread the word. Emma Chase is under Alpha's protection. Anyone who harms her answers to me personally. Anyone who helps her is rewarded. Make sure every pack in the city understands. Yes, Alpha. They responded in unison, then melted back into the shadows. Sebastian pulled me close, his face buried in my hair. I should send you away. Somewhere safe. Somewhere my enemies can't reach you. Don't you dare, I said fiercely. I chose this. I chose you. You don't get to make that choice for me. Even if it means danger? Even if it means living with guards and threats and the constant knowledge that you're a target? Even then. I pulled back to look at him. But Sebastian, I can't live like this if I'm always helpless. If I'm always the weakness to be exploited. Teach me how to defend myself. Give me tools to survive in your world. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise mixed with approval. You want to learn to fight. I want to learn to survive. There's a difference. I thought of Cassandra's broken glass smile, of how easily she could have killed me if Dimitri hadn't arrived. I'm human. I'll never be as strong or fast as a Lycan. But I can be smart. I can be prepared. I can be something other than a liability. Sebastian studied me for a long moment, and I saw him reassessing, recognizing something in me that perhaps he'd missed before. Dimitri can teach you hand-to-hand combat. I can teach you pack politics, how to navigate the power structures. But Emma, it will be hard. You'll hurt. You'll fail. You'll want to quit. I've survived worse than hard training, I said, thinking of Owen, of the slow erosion of self that emotional abuse brings. At least this pain has a purpose. Then we start tomorrow. He kissed my forehead gently. But tonight you stay at the pack house. I'm not risking another attempt. The pack house had a guest suite that was larger than my entire apartment, with a bathroom that could have been featured in design magazines and a bed that felt like sleeping on clouds. Sebastian showed me to the room, lingering at the doorway as though reluctant to leave. My room is down the hall, he said. If you need anything, stay, I interrupted. Please, I don't want to be alone tonight. He entered slowly, closing the door behind him. We lay on top of the covers, fully clothed, his arms around me, and my head on his chest. His heartbeat was steady beneath my ear, grounding me after the terror of the attack. Tell me about your sister, I said quietly. The one who was hurt. What's her name? Natasha. His voice was soft. She's 2 years younger than me. When we were children, she was fearless, always climbing too high, running too fast, challenging anyone who said she couldn't do something because she was female. What happened to her? After you got her out? She went to a rehabilitation center that specializes in trauma recovery. Spent 2 years learning to be herself again. Now she lives in a small town upstate, runs a bookstore, gardens. He paused. She's happy, I think, or as happy as someone can be after what she survived. But she's not fearless anymore. That part of her died. I'm sorry, I whispered. Don't be sorry. Be angry. His arms tightened around me. Be angry that men like her ex-partner exist. Be angry that society enables them, excuses them, lets them destroy people, and then use that anger to make sure it doesn't happen to someone else. Is that what you do? Use your anger for good? I try. He was quiet for a moment. Being alpha isn't just about strength or dominance. It's about creating a space where the vulnerable are protected, where power doesn't equal the right to abuse. My pack has rules, strict ones, about how we treat humans, how we treat each other. Break those rules and you answer to me. Tell me the rules, I said, genuinely curious. No forced transformations. No killing humans except in direct self-defense. No exposing our nature recklessly. No abuse within the pack, emotional, physical, or otherwise. Consent is absolute. His voice was firm, carrying the weight of deeply held conviction. And anyone under Alpha's protection is pack, regardless of their species. You harm them, you harm me. I thought about those rules, about the world Sebastian had created within his territory. It wasn't perfect. There was still violence, still danger. But it was intentional, moral. An attempt to balance the predatory nature of what his people were with the ethical responsibilities of being stronger than those around them. Your pack is lucky to have you, I said. My pack is why I survived after Natasha was hurt, he corrected. When I wanted to burn the world down for failing to protect her, they reminded me that destruction doesn't heal wounds, that the best revenge is building something better. So you built this. I built this. He kissed the top of my head, and now you're part of it, which means tomorrow you start training. Dimitri will work you until you're exhausted. You'll discover muscles you didn't know you had. You'll want to quit approximately 40 times. But I won't, I said firmly. No, Sebastian agreed, something like pride in his voice. You won't. Because you're not the frightened woman I met at the gala anymore. You're becoming something stronger. I fell asleep in his arms, feeling safer than I had in months despite the very real danger I now faced, because Sebastian was right. I was becoming something stronger. Something that could survive in his world not as a victim waiting to be rescued, but as someone who could stand beside him. As an equal. The next morning, Dimitri woke me at 6 with coffee and a grim smile. Welcome to training, Emma. The Alpha says to start you off gently. 6 hours later, lying on the training mat with every muscle screaming, I learned that Dimitri's definition of gentle was somewhat different from mine. But I didn't quit. I was done being helpless. 2 months transformed everything. My body changed first, becoming leaner, stronger, capable of movements I'd never imagined. Dimitri was a relentless teacher, pushing me past every limit I thought I had, and then pushing further. I learned to fall without breaking, to strike with precision, to read body language and anticipate attacks. I'd never be as fast or strong as a Lycan, but I became dangerous in my own right. My mind changed too. Sebastian taught me pack politics during long evenings in his study, the intricate web of alliances and rivalries that governed supernatural society. I learned which packs could be trusted, which were volatile, which leaders valued honor and which valued only power. I became fluent in a language of gestures and territorial markers that humans never noticed, and my heart changed most of all. Falling in love with Sebastian Volkov was like learning to breathe underwater, unnatural at first, then essential. He was patient with my fears, fierce in my defense, and gentle in ways that contradicted everything his position required him to be. When we were alone, the alpha mask would slip, and I'd see the man beneath, scarred, lonely, desperate for connection, but terrified of the vulnerability it required. I love you, I told him one night, the words emerging unbidden as we lay tangled together in his bed, moonlight painting silver patterns across his skin. He went very still. Emma, I know it's complicated. I know it makes me more of a target. I know every reason why I shouldn't. I propped myself up to look at him directly. I love you anyway. You don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. Sebastian's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating tenderness. I've loved you since the moment you whispered for help at the Gala, since you trusted a stranger to protect you when you had no reason to trust anyone, since you looked at my claws and silver eyes and chose to stay. His voice roughened. You're the bravest person I've ever met, Emma Chase, and loving you is both the easiest and most terrifying thing I've ever done. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of everything words couldn't capture, and when we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I knew with absolute certainty that this, us, was worth every danger, every threat, every complication his world brought. The confrontation with Owen came 2 weeks later. Sebastian had been handling it quietly, pack members ensuring Owen understood that approaching me again would have consequences. But Owen, true to his nature, refused to accept boundaries he hadn't set himself. I was leaving the pack house after morning training when I found him waiting by my car, his expression a careful blend of concern and determination. 2 of Sebastian's guards flanked him at a distance, watching but not interfering. Emma, please, Owen said as I approached. Just give me 5 minutes. That's all I ask. Every instinct screamed to refuse, to call the guards, to retreat to safety. But I'd spent 2 months learning to face threats instead of fleeing them. And maybe, I thought, Owen needed to hear certain things directly from me. 5 minutes, I said, unlocking my car but not getting in. And you stay exactly where you are. Relief flooded his face. Thank you. I've been trying to reach you, but your number's changed, and Emma, I'm worried about you. This man you're involved with, he's dangerous. There are things you don't know about him, about what he's capable of. I know exactly what he's capable of, I interrupted. I know about his business, his connections, his world. I know all of it, Owen, and I chose to stay. Because he's manipulating you, Owen insisted. This is exactly what abusers do. They isolate you from friends, from anyone who might tell you the truth, and then they... Like you did? My voice was quiet but firm. When you convinced me my friends didn't really care about me, when you made me doubt my own perceptions, my own feelings, until I couldn't trust myself, when you turned every disagreement into proof that I was unstable, Owen's expression flickered. That's not... I was trying to help you. You were always so sensitive, so emotional. I was trying to give you structure, stability. You were trying to control me. I felt surprisingly calm, as though I were discussing someone else's life rather than my own. And the worst part is that you probably believe you were helping. That's what makes you so dangerous, Owen. You genuinely think love equals possession. And Volkov doesn't possess you? Owen's tone turned sharp. You're with him constantly. You live in his house. His people follow you everywhere. How is that different from what I did? Because he asked, I said simply. Because every step of the way, Sebastian gave me choices and respected my decisions. Because when I said no, he listened. Because his protection doesn't come with the requirement that I diminish myself to make him feel powerful. You're deluded, Owen said, frustration bleeding through his careful concern. He's got you so twisted around that you can't see. I see perfectly clearly. I met his eyes directly, no longer afraid of his judgment or his anger. I see that you're a small, insecure man who mistakes control for strength. I see that you probably do this with every woman you date, wear them down, make them doubt themselves, isolate them until they're too exhausted to leave. And I see that I wasted 2 years of my life believing your version of who I was instead of trusting myself. Owen's face hardened, the concerned boyfriend mask finally cracking completely. You'll regret this. When Volkov gets tired of you, when he moves on to someone else, you'll realize I was the only one who ever actually cared. Sebastian would never get tired of me, I said with absolute certainty. Because he doesn't view love as a transaction where my worth diminishes over time. He sees me as a partner, an equal, someone whose strength makes him stronger rather than threatening him. You think you're strong? Owen laughed bitterly. Emma, you're the same scared little girl I met 3 years ago. You're just playing dress-up in a world you don't understand, and when it all falls apart, it won't fall apart. Sebastian's voice came from behind me, and I turned to see him approaching with Dimitri and several pack members. His expression was cold, controlled, absolutely lethal. And you need to leave. Now. Owen straightened, trying to maintain dignity in the face of Sebastian's overwhelming presence. I have every right to speak with Emma. We have history. You have nothing, Sebastian said flatly. Emma has made her choice clear. You've been warned multiple times to stay away from her. This is your final warning. If you approach her again, if you contact her in any way, if you so much as look in her direction, I will ensure you regret it. Am I understood? You can't threaten me, Owen blustered, though he was backing toward his car. I'll go to the police. I'll tell them. Tell them what? Sebastian's smile was all teeth. That a businessman suggested you leave his girlfriend alone? That you've been harassing a woman who's made it clear she wants nothing to do with you? Please, by all means, involve the police. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your pattern of behavior. Owen's face went pale. He looked at me one last time, perhaps hoping to see doubt or regret. Instead, he saw me standing beside Sebastian, completely at ease with the man he'd tried to paint as dangerous, and something in his expression crumbled. You deserve each other, he spat, then got in his car and drove away too fast, tires squealing. I watched him go, feeling nothing but relief and a strange sort of pity. Owen would probably find another woman to control, another relationship to poison, but he wouldn't find me. I was done being his victim. Sebastian's arm came around my waist, pulling me close. Are you all right? I'm perfect, I said, and meant it. Thank you for letting me handle that myself. You didn't need me to handle it. You had it completely under control. Pride colored his voice, though I was ready to intervene if necessary. I know. I turned to face him fully. You're always ready to protect me, but you also let me be strong. That's the difference between you and him. Dimitri approached, his weathered face showing approval. The human has learned well. She didn't flinch, didn't retreat. You've chosen wisely, Alpha. Sebastian's eyes met mine, silver flickering in their depths. Yes, he said softly. I have. The weeks that followed brought a new stability. Owen disappeared from my life completely. I heard later that he'd moved to another city, which didn't surprise me. Men like him preferred to find new targets, rather than face continued rejection. The Northside Pack, after Sebastian's brutal demonstration of his willingness to protect me, backed down from their territorial challenges. Cassandra sent a formal apology through pack channels, acknowledging that threatening me had been a strategic error. The other packs in the city took note. Emma Chase was under the Volkov Alpha's protection, and harming her wasn't worth the consequences. I moved into the pack house permanently, my small apartment packed up and put into storage. My freelance business thrived. Several pack members commissioned work from me, and Dimitri connected me with clients in the supernatural community who valued discretion and quality. I was building a life that was mine, supported by, but not dependent on Sebastian's resources. Natasha came to visit 6 months after Sebastian revealed his nature to me. She was quiet, careful, watching me with Sebastian, as though trying to understand how we worked. On her 3rd day visiting, she sought me out in the garden where I'd been sketching design concepts. You love him, she said without preamble. I do. And he loves you. I can see it, the way he looks at you, like you're both his salvation and his greatest fear. Natasha sat beside me on the bench, her dark hair so similar to Sebastian's catching the afternoon light. I wanted to hate you. When he first told me about you, I thought you were naive, foolish. That you'd break his heart or get yourself killed. And now? Now I see that you're the strongest person I've met in years. You walked into my brother's world knowing the dangers and chose to stay anyway. You didn't let fear paralyze you. You learned to fight back. She smiled, and I saw echoes of the fearless girl Sebastian had described. You're good for him. You remind him that strength doesn't always look like dominance, that vulnerability can be a kind of courage. He saved me, I said quietly. Not just from Owen, but from the version of myself that believed I deserved to be small and invisible. He gave me space to become something more. And you saved him from loneliness. Natasha's hand covered mine briefly. Thank you for that. For seeing past the alpha to the man underneath. That evening, Sebastian found me on the terrace overlooking the estate grounds. Twilight painted everything in shades of blue and gold, and the first stars were emerging in the darkening sky. Natasha told me you two talked, he said, wrapping his arms around me from behind. She did. She's remarkable, Sebastian. I can see the woman she was in glimpses. The fearlessness is still there, just more carefully guarded. She likes you. She said you remind her of who she used to be. He pressed a kiss to my temple. Coming from her, that's the highest compliment possible. We stood in comfortable silence, watching night claim the day. This was my life now, standing beside an alpha werewolf, part of a pack I'd never imagined existed, living in a world of magic and danger and profound connection. It was complicated, and sometimes terrifying, and absolutely nothing like the safe, small existence I'd lived before. It was perfect. Marry me, Sebastian said suddenly. I turned in his arms, my heart stuttering. What? Marry me. His eyes were serious, vulnerable in a way his alpha's mask never allowed. Not because it's expected, or because it changes anything fundamental between us, but because I want everyone, human and Lycan, pack and rival, friend and enemy, to know that you're mine and I'm yours, completely, irrevocably, forever. Sebastian, I know it's fast. I know there are complications, legal ones, political ones, but Emma, I've spent my entire adult life being careful, being strategic, protecting myself from vulnerability, and then you walked into my life and made me believe that some risks are worth taking, that some connections are worth fighting for, that love isn't weakness, it's the source of every strength that matters. Tears blurred my vision. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and full of promise. And when we finally broke apart, both laughing and crying, I knew with absolute certainty that this was my future, standing beside this complicated, fierce, gentle man, building a life in a world that was dangerous and magical and real, choosing courage over fear, love over safety, connection over isolation. We married 3 months later in a ceremony that blended human tradition with pack ritual. Natasha stood as my maid of honor, Dmitri as Sebastian's best man. The pack gathered to witness their alpha claiming his mate, and I felt the weight of their acceptance, their protection, their welcome into a family I'd never expected to find. Owen sent no acknowledgement, no last attempt at contact. He'd moved on to easier targets, I assumed, and I wished those future women strength and clarity and the courage to leave before too much damage was done. My life became an intricate dance between two worlds, designing logos during the day, attending pack meetings at night, navigating human clients and supernatural politics, being Emma Chase, independent businesswoman, and Emma Volkov, the alpha's mate. It wasn't always easy, but it was authentic, real, mine. Years later, standing on that same terrace with Sebastian's arms around me and our daughter sleeping inside, fully human, we'd learned, inheriting none of her father's Lycan nature but all of his fierce protectiveness, I thought about the terrified woman I'd been at the Gala, the one who'd whispered for help from a stranger. That woman had been brave enough to ask. And in asking, she'd found not just rescue, but transformation. Not just safety, but strength. Not just protection, but partnership. She'd found home. "What are you thinking about?" Sebastian asked, his voice soft in the darkness. "About fairy tales," I said. "About how they always end with happily ever after, without showing what that actually looks like. And what does it look like?" I turned to face him, this man who'd seen me at my weakest and helped me become my strongest. "It looks like this. Complicated and dangerous and absolutely perfect. It looks like choosing each other every day, even when it's hard. It looks like building something real instead of something safe." Sebastian smiled, pressing his forehead to mine. "I love you, Emma Volkov. I love you too, Sebastian, always." And standing there in the darkness with stars emerging overhead and our daughter sleeping peacefully inside, I knew that this, us, our complicated life, our hard-won happiness, was worth every risk, every danger, every terrifying moment that had brought us here. This was our happily ever after. Not perfect, not safe, but real, and that was everything.